Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, today we have an interview with an incredibly fascinating artist, car collector, professor.
Collector, writer, lecturer. Yeah, Kenny Schachter. You might know him from his book, the NFT book of 2023. He's also got a regular column on ArtNet. And he actually has a show right now at Jupiter Gallery in New York called Art in the Age of Robotic Reproduction. So he's got a lot going on. And but he's also a car guy.
Yeah, and he has a lot of cars as well.
Yes.
I mean, he has more than a dozen really cool classic cars.
He also mentioned his Honda, his 1998 Integra that he's got, but also he's owned major cars, like very famously in 1973 RSR. Also a couple of concept cars by Zaha Hadid.
That's very cool. So he basically came up with his own idea and had someone design a car.
Right.
And then even tried to put it into production.
That takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Which I think he discovered.
But he's the kind of guy that does a lot of work, right?
Yeah, I know. He's very prolific.
He's driven. So great interview. I'm looking forward to playing that.
So you had something you texted me, Matt. You texted me. Or no, you sent like an early morning email that was basically, I think the subject was, for the first time in my life.
Yes.
Do you want to discuss this?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Well, for the first time in my life, if you told me that I could buy any brand new car and only have one car, right? This is the classic question that people ask. If you could only have one car, what would it be? If I were only allowed to choose from things that are being produced and sold today, I would buy an electric vehicle.
What?
This
was shocking to me, because we might have even been accused of being hard on electric vehicles.
Well, I am very skeptical about electric vehicles, and I think for good reason. And this is something we talk about with Kenny, which was interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm an older person, right? So I'm 50. I'm grew up with these gas powered cars, and I think, whatever generation you're born into, when you start to realize that you're interested in cars or, art or anything like that, music, you tend to gravitate towards that. So I gravitate towards, big gas motors with a lot of power. I like naturally aspirated engines. But I have also a specific use case, right?
Yes.
If I ask you if you can only have one car, your answer is going to be different than mine. And
I'm also going to say, well, what am I going to be doing with it?
Right.
Because it's all about the right tool for the job. Cars are tools.
For sure.
It's about the right tool.
I think for each person also, there's going to be a different tool that you need for if you could only have one tool, right? This is the
everyone's
question.
Life is different. I mean, do you live in Montana or do you live in Manhattan?
Right. You live in L.A. You have Willow.
Right.
You've got whatever you're doing.
Exactly. It's not just about which car I think is the prettiest.
Exactly. So, I'm not going to choose. If you say you can only have one car, I love the Corvette, but I'm not going to choose that because it only has two seats and it's not really great for the passenger either.
You've got children and you
kids.
Drive like a maniac.
Yes. And so anyway, this Mercedes G580, this electric G Wagon, just absolutely blew my mind. And I went into it incredibly skeptical because
you love the G.
I love the gas-powered G, and that was my one car, for a couple of years. And it ticked every box I needed it to when I lived in Berlin, when I was having my first kid, when I had my dog. It was the perfect vehicle, and I loved the engine. It was the most recent G500 that I had was a 2020. It had the twin turbo 4-liter V8. Great burbly sound, went quick. You don't really need a huge top speed there, but I was Autobahn driving, so it has to go decently fast.
And let's not forget, everybody, the G Wagon, sorry to cut you off, is so popular that for like 18 months back a couple years ago, they just stopped taking orders because they were so far behind in production.
Right. Well, it took me.
They couldn't meet the demand.
It took me almost 2 years to get mine after I ordered it.
There you go. Yeah.
And of course, I love the design because when I was 12 years old, I saw one down the street and I was just mesmerized by it. And of course, the G Wagon has unique characteristics. The door closes in a different way than any other car. When you lock or unlock it with the key fob, it sounds like you're racking shotgun shells into the barrel.
It does sound like a shotgun.
There are things that I like about it that maybe not everyone's going to like about it. I like the very upright driving position. I like the incredible accomplishment they've made in terms of NVH, right? Noise, vibration, and harshness. I typically love these kind of truck/cars.
It's a very tactile
I like
vehicle.
Jeep Wranglers. I like Ford Broncos. But the problem with those is they're so loud and noisy and rattle cages. And this is like it feels like you're in a safe, like a bank vault.
It's a bank vault.
Yeah.
It completely is. So the whole point is, don't change this beautiful, perfect thing that we love. Don't change a thing. And they really haven't since 1979, pretty much.
Pretty much. There was a 2019. They kind of, I think, made some pretty big changes.
They modernized it, and I will always remember that debut in Detroit in that old, decrepit theater that they turned into a pyrotechnic display and they got Arnold Schwarzenegger there.
All right.
For the debut. I will always remember that. It was a big deal because the change was a big deal.
Yeah, and a lot of people prefer the older generation.
Yes.
I prefer the newer generation because it
think they did
drives
good.
better. And look, I'm not buying this to take off-road. I'm using it to commute back and forth in urban situations, in suburban situations, to go shopping, I'll take it, shooting, I'll take it hunting, but that's not the main purpose for me. And also, it's an incredibly expensive vehicle. Like, I don't frankly think I could afford it now that I have kids and live in a very expensive place. But I could at the time, and I wasn't about to get it damaged by, taking it to Moab. Although that would have been an incredibly far drive from Berlin. Yeah.
Anyway, all that to say,
I think this electric version is actually better than, for the first time, the gas version of this car. And I haven't thought that about any. I've driven electric versions, for example, of the BMW 5 Series. And while impressive, I don't think it was as good as the gas version. I can't think of any car that I've liked the electric version better than the gas, and I don't typically love, I'm not a huge fan of Teslas, for example, but this thing is so quick. With the EV, it's almost 600 horsepower. I think it's 579 horsepower. It has 859 pound-feet of torque, 116 kilowatt-hour battery, or that's the usable capacity of the battery. So it has decent range. I was getting 300 miles on a charge.
That's standard, industry standard.
Yeah,
at this
and
point, yes.
It's just for this, for some reason, it works so much better for the G than it does for other cars. For example, I didn't like the Cadillac IQ, the electric version.
I know you didn't.
Better than the Cadillac with the 6.2 liter.
Right.
Sorry, the Escalade. Yeah.
The Escalade. Yes.
I think my own personal opinion, the electric version is too heavy, and I would prefer to have the regular GM V8, especially if it were supercharged. And I think compared to other cars like this, SUVs it's the right car, it's the right tool for me right now. I think this is better than the Range Rover. Now, there's not an electric version of the Range Rover, right? There will be. But I've driven the most recent Range Rover. I've driven the most recent Tahoe, Yukon. To me, it's better than those and better than the Aston Martin. And it's better than, for me, the Lamborghini Urus. I tread lightly because I know you love that.
Yeah, I do. Well, I'm really, really happy to hear you say that. I'm very, very surprised. And I think Mercedes was able to pull off the magic trick of not changing as much as possible about the G and yet still making it electric, because that's a very fine line to walk. Imagine Porsche trying to electrify the 911. I mean, you're dealing with something that's very iconic, it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so anytime you approach something like that with an electric powertrain and everything that means, I think they did a great job by trying to leave as much as possible unchanged in the G Wagon. And I feel like that's a big reason why it worked.
I also think it's a great use case. For the
Yes.
911, maybe you don't want the electric drivetrain because it's a sports car.
Yeah.
But for example, the G Wagon, I've always thought the G63 was kind of stupid. Like,
What?
Yeah,
What?
because
what?
it's it's a big heavy brick,
car.
right? It's
Yeah.
the least aerodynamic thing. It's not
It's so fast.
It doesn't
though. It's
handle.
So fast.
It doesn't handle like a
It's
sports
fast,
car
though,
does.
and it's powerful, and you can just crush everything.
I just
it's
felt
not
like
supposed to be a sports
the
car.
regular twin turbo V8 was sufficient.
That
right?
is that's the first time I've ever heard you say something that wasn't the most powerful was enough. That is so not you. Don't you want?
I know,
everything?
but I just think for this house, it's a moving house,
how can
right?
you be saying moderation is just fine for you?
It just felt like that was overkill, and I can't remember the price differential, but it's like adding, at the time I bought mine, an extra $40,000 on an already fairly unaffordable vehicle.
Yeah.
It just seemed silly, and so.
Oh,
but
it's so
for me, the electric
amazing.
powertrain
So throaty.
is perfect for this big moving brick.
Yes, and I will take the opportunity to brag a little bit and say that I was the first American journalist to drive this vehicle in 2023. And the reason why I bring that up is because I drove it in Austria off-road on extremely steep dirt and rock and shale and gravel, and it was incredible. And I'm talking like inclines of 40% incline, and it was great. I mean, the only thing that I can think about it being an issue is where you're going to plug in your G-Wagon out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, out in the middle of nowhere. That's a good point. True.
That's the one thing. But I remember in Austria talking about how, and this is very European, but of course Mercedes is like, there's a use case here for people who do use the G-Wagons off-road, either for hunting or for photography or for simply not wanting to disturb
Nature.
animals.
Yeah.
And this sounds so funny, but I literally remember driving past rabbits in the forest in Austria, and it didn't disturb them, and that was really cool. And obviously it's a very obscure use case for it, but there is a legitimate use case for that too. So that was very cool to see. It
Right,
made
and
sense.
I also thought about, my experience with charging hasn't been good, but I haven't been charging at home. And so, for example, with the Escalade, I had to go find a place. It took over an hour to charge. It costs $111 for that. I think it was 55 minutes, or actually, so a little less than an hour. And, that kind of left a bad taste in my
not
mouth.
fun.
But of course, if you buy one of these vehicles, and as EV owners can attest to, you're going to install a level 2 charger in your garage.
Yes.
And the truth is, I'm not often driving more than 300 miles,
Yeah.
not even often driving more than 100, 150 miles in a day. Even
Not
if
a
I
big
go
deal.
hunting, which for me is an hour away up in Millbrook, I just don't need enough range to have to charge. And then you get home, plug it in your garage.
Yes.
When you wake up in the morning, it's fully charged again.
Completely.
So-
and there's something. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just, of course, you take longer trips. And for most people, you don't only have, or for people listening to this podcast, unlikely that they only have one car. But even if you did only have this car to take a long trip, I don't think it's that bad. If I drive to Ohio, which is where I typically drive because I'm from the great state of Ohio, the most fantastic place in America, I would have to charge probably twice, like max. and it wouldn't be the worst.
Yeah.
So I don't think that that's really a terrible argument against it. I will say that so we had an email from someone who asked me to compare it to other cars, which is why I said I like it better than all of those other Tahoe, Yukon, Escalade, Range Rover, Lamborghini, Aston Martin. I will say that I haven't driven every car, right? I haven't driven, for example, a Porsche Cayenne since 2019.
Neither have I, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, didn't you guys just drove one to Colorado, right?
That was a Macan.
Oh, all right. Well, I remember in 2019 being blown away by the new generation Cayenne, and I imagine it is still an amazing vehicle.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think they've changed it. It's still
but I don't think it's as unique in America XLA as a G Wagon, right? Because even in New York, it's pretty unique, the G Wagon.
The G?
Yeah.
You think?
And it's a different feel than the Cayenne that I remember, although the Cayenne's an amazing vehicle. I will also say that I did drive the Audi SQ8, and I loved it. Really liked it a lot.
What did you like about that vehicle?
For me, the SQ8, where the G Wagon is like an upright box, that puts you high and makes you feel like you're doing something adventurous, even if you're commuting or going to ShopRite. The Audi SQ8 was more sleek. Yes. It was more of a sports car feel in an SUV. I liked the center stack. I loved the engine, obviously. I loved the design of the Q8 in general. I think Audi knocked it out of the park with that when they first put it out 10 years ago, and it still looks perfect. But yeah, I think if I had to choose any car, it would be this. And again, that has to do with my use case. It has to do with my history. But I think the main headline is the EV powertrain works for me better in this than the gas powertrain did.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think the price on this was what, $150 or so?
Ooh, no, it's way more.
No.
So, yeah, the G580, I think it's $167.
Well, that's not way more.
Okay,
I mean,
it's
mid.
I think for most people unaffordable, right? It is very expensive. It's $40,000 more than it was when I bought it in 2020, the gas version.
Yeah.
And
prices are going up.
It's just like it's beyond my reach. I'll say that.
Yeah,
as anything more than a test vehicle.
But honestly, I totally agree with you. For those who can afford it, it's great. It's really, really, really good. I liked it then. I like it now.
As Ferris Bueller says, if you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up.
Oh, great. And I should say, too, look, this show is not meant to be a car review show. We have lots of car reviews online on Bloomberg.com written by moi. And I really encourage you to read the actual review of these vehicles. This is banter. This is our colloquial conversation of it. So please dive in, too.
Yes. Go read Hannah's reviews. She reviewed this when she was the first American journalist to drive it in the Shekel Proving Grounds.
I mean, I'm not a bragger, but I am going to lay down that street cred because I was really excited to drive it because I, like you, was very skeptical. And I went in thinking this is just going to be like holding my nose thinking that there's no way this can be good. And it was. By the way,
I was skeptical of your review for the last 2 years, right? You came back and you were like, it's amazing, it's perfect.
Yes.
And I was
you're like, she has no idea what she's talking about.
Well, I was like, yeah, you were in Austria in the mountains with the CEO of Mercedes. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Matt, that just made my day. That makes me so happy. That makes me, because I'm not going to force my opinions down on anybody. It's take it or leave it, but it's really nice to hear that you can see what I was saying.
Okay. I just want to, so a little correction. The base price is $161,500.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's base. So as soon as you start to add, the one I have, and I'll post it on Instagram, is the signature Midnight Blue. That adds $7,000 already.
Ooh, I bet that was so good looking.
It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's like as understated as a G Wagon can be, because it's not a shiny metallic color.
I certainly have people in my life who will go unnamed, but multiple people who really make fun of my appreciation for the G Wagon, and also as evidence that somehow it's not a valid vehicle, they point to some people who drive it.
The Kardashians.
Well,
and by the way,
I'm not naming names. I mean, I'm a big Kardashian fan, for the record. I find them fascinating and a cultural study, but that's a different discussion. But you can't blame a car on who drives it. If the car is great, the car is great.
And we should do an episode on, the people who stereotypically drive cars, because in Berlin also it was seen immediately as like a drug dealer's car, a mafia car. And
I wanted to do something about that with Maseratis in the UK, because there's a certain contingent who drives a Maserati, and I would love to do that story, but I don't know if I can get away with it. It's a minefield.
True. It's
just a minefield.
It's an HR issue, probably.
Yeah.
And maybe a classist thing as well.
It's terrible.
In any case, let's get to, by the way, speaking of the UK, because he spent a lot of time there. Speaking of banter, because he did a lot of that with us.
Our fascinating guest.
Let's get to Kenny Schachter.
Kenny, it's so nice to have you here. Thanks for coming down a bit. Although I think you kind of live in Midtown, right?
I live 4 blocks away. You're both welcome to come and visit. I live literally 4 blocks away from here.
That's excellent.
I didn't even have an excuse to drive, that's for sure.
4 blocks
Wonderful.
I will tell you something. When I lived in Berlin, I lived on Dorotheenstrasse, which my house was, I think, less than 4 blocks away from our office, and yet I would ride my motorcycle to the office almost every day.
That's
just
naughty.
Because I need to hear the sound and, be
it's
on
a ritual.
Yeah.
It's your thing.
I figured you were a hardcore motorcycle person.
It is true.
From seeing some of your reportage in the past.
It is true. But I love cars also. What about you? What are your big interests? Where does it center?
Well, I have a multitude of different things that I'm obsessed with. Ranging from, I don't mean to kiss up to you guys, but Bloomberg is among.
Let's discuss this.
Okay, so
what do you mean when you say that?
You watch Bloomberg TV?
Because this is a rarity.
Radio?
This is a rarity.
Yeah.
Okay, so first I could just say I'm an artist. I'm a professor. Teacher sounds less pretentious, and an investigative journalist for the art world, about the machinations of the art market, and. We'll get into cars in a second, but cars were my gateway drug to art. But as a journalist and as someone whose contemporary art is a reflection of the social, political, economic, and technological times we live in. And for me, reading the newspapers, I'm fanatical about newspapers. I lived in the UK for 15 years, and there's 10 daily newspapers, and they have magazine supplements, all of them, on both Saturday and Sunday. But I get the chills coming in here and walking through this building. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll start with the beginning. The first thing you see when you go through the revolving door is art. So the combination of all of my passions sort of converge right here. All that's missing was a car or 6 in the art-saturated lobby. And someone said
This is a good idea.
Someone said you guys have great snacks, but it's more like meals. But seriously, if you had like a couple of great classic cars interspersed throughout the art, that could be When I was being ushered into this room, the woman said, who was kind enough to come and fetch me, I was looking at this sculpture, and she said, "Oh, I don't know what that is. I've been thinking about this for so long. Is it to deaden the sound?" And I'm like, "I told you that it's a sculpture." And then she said, "You sure it's not serving some purpose for acoustics?" And I'm like, no, you're not listening. It's art. Art doesn't have a purpose. But for me, back to Bloomberg, I love the news because for me, I get inspired by the news for my writing and my teaching and my art making. So I'm actually writing about Bloomberg in my latest article, which is on ArtNet. And if you want to watch the news today, the only objective context within which to see anything that's going on in the world is on Bloomberg. I remember 25 years ago, I'm significantly older than the both of you, when you were able to watch the news and remarkably see the news, not someone's opinion about current events. And you go to CNN, BBC, MSNBC, Fox, they all have positions that are established before they even start reporting. And that, to me, is not the news. That's an agenda. And if anything, we live in I don't even believe there's communism anymore. Pretty much everyone is capitalist. And if anything is going to affect the world, you'll see the first hiccup in the markets. And so by watching Bloomberg, you get to take the temperature of what's happening, not just in the markets, but in the world. So for me, literally, again, I'm not submitting my resume for a job, although I would certainly at least take an internship for a week or two. But sometimes I even sleep with Bloomberg on.
Well, Mike's right here, so you could ask.
Please introduce him to Mike.
By the way, I agree, and I think about this a lot in that I don't know if we don't have an opinion in terms of, the anchors, the reporters, the broadcasters, but money doesn't have an opinion, right? Financial markets don't have a political view. So through that lens, you can really see an unbiased take
100%.
on what's happening. I want to center in on the art thing, though, because I have never paid enough attention to the art that we have here. So for people who haven't been to 731 Lexington Avenue, when you come in, there's a row of wooden sculptures that to me look like cocoons. I don't know what they are. And then when you come up, before you get on our circular escalator, which is the only curved escalator in the Western Hemisphere, you see this massive sculpture of what I believe is a thundercloud.
Yes.
It's like hammered
from the
metal.
60s.
It looks like,
it's so cool.
It is very cool.
And then you've got these lights that I always tell people that's Mike's DNA, but I don't know what it really is. So what do you think about the artwork that we have here?
Look, when you see a car, most people who like classic cars respond to cars they first took note of when they were a kid, 12, 13, 14, and it moves you. You have an emotional response. So you just mentioned something about these wooden sculptures. I didn't have a chance to glance. I actually asked the reception person who made them, and he mentioned there was a label. I did know the artist who's from Africa, Elliott, who did this giant bottle cap tapestry from found objects on the streets of, I believe, Nigeria. And your first impression about what this cloud sculpture was amazing, because that's quite accurate in terms of the intent of the artist. But the beauty of art is that it's your sense of what you respond to, how you respond to it. You bring something. I think the great thing about art is the ambiguity, and the viewer finishes the equation. Art can't exist in a vacuum. So it's self-expression, but it's a means of communication. Like through my art and my love of cars, I'm sitting here talking to both of you, and it's extraordinary for me because, like I said, I'm a fan of Hannah. I've watched your reporting for quite a long time, both of you, and I'm really appreciative and love it. So, yeah, it's a convergence of all the things I like. So for me, art was a way to... Yeah, it gives me solace, and it imbues my life with meaning. It gives me purpose. I love to communicate, and I love to help people and facilitate opportunities for other artists.
Kenny, I'm very surprised. You said that cars were my gateway drug to art. I would have thought it was the other way around, actually.
Well, now we're going to get into like
about that?
A therapy session.
Yeah, that is really backwards from what I would have guessed.
Well, I don't want to get too deep into the whole.
We can go there.
Do you have a couch?
We can go.
I'll lay down. So I grew up only 17 miles from where I'm sitting today.
Long Island, right?
Yes.
Yep.
But it could have been 17 light years away because I was in the suburbs, and it was kind of generic. I didn't know what an art gallery was until I was well into my 20s. And my mother passed away when I was young, and my father wasn't terribly supportive, to be kind. And I sort of was a recluse, and I created a universe for myself to entertain myself. And it was through magazines from like National Geographic, that was a gift to me, like it often is for young kids, to Road and Track and car magazines. And first and foremost, I was never athletic. The reason I never shut up now is I stuttered, so I had a speech impediment for a good long time. And cars, it's the industrial design of cars. I'm terrible at sports. I don't watch F1 or any other football, soccer, baseball. But I love the design of cars. And for me, my sweet spot, because of my age, I guess, and when I grew up, cars from, the 70s are the great unsung decade because I think there's wonderful designs from then. But I love cars from the 70s and 80s up to the 90s when there was more kind of consideration, less homogenation of the design and the way things were. And yeah, I have a very non-hierarchical approach to art, cars, aesthetics, and I think anything done with passion, like the design of a great car from that period or any period, there's still great cars being made, just significantly less of them. But I think I don't differentiate from something that's done well, extraordinarily, with this kind of deep-seated passion. And on that basis alone, I don't differentiate between a Picasso, a chair, a spoon, or a car. I used to live with 3 cars in my office, including one under my desk, which you could
cars?
easily. Oh God, I've had too many to mention, but I love Lancia.
Yes.
Lancia. I have a Long Island accent.
Lancia.
You'll have to pardon my accent. I have a 1970 Lancia Fulvia Fanalone. I have a garage. The reason I rented and then later was able to buy the place I live in was that it had a garage. It was decrepit, it had mold, but it had a garage. Most significantly, lots of wall space and light, all the significant things that moved me. So,
which is, by the way, no small feat in New York. Finding a place with a garage around here is difficult.
That's
even
the
if you
ticket.
Live in the suburbs, it's just there isn't a lot of space.
No. What scares me a little bit, to get all over the place, but I have 3 kids, and when I think about the relationship of kids, both to art and to cars, is a little worrisome to me, because I find that kids are looking for other experiences today. When it comes to cars, they just get a car service. I don't want to drop the names of any of those horrific companies, but
Dial 7.
What's that?
Dial 7.
Yeah,
That's my favorite.
Oh
car
yeah,
service.
77777.
Yeah.
But anyway, so for me, when I was a kid, especially in the suburbs of Long Island, isolated, alienated, a car was a symbol of getting away, primarily from my family, from home, independence, hitting the road and exploring. And it had this, and through culture, through film, through books, it had this incredible kind of aura to the notion of jumping in, getting your license. I lied to my parents for a year that I had a permit permitted you to drive alone, rolling the station wagon out of the driveway to go to nightclubs when I was 16, all of that stuff. It just hasn't.
Do you really think that kids... I heard today Constellation Brands had an earnings report. They're a liquor and alcohol maker. And they said that Gen Z isn't as interested in alcohol. And I thought, is that really true?
Oh, for sure that's true. And I'll tell you a stat. There was more alcohol sold in one day at Stagecoach than there was in the entire Coachella 2 weekends. And we know the age difference of the people going to Stagecoach. Also, I can tell you, my DJ friends are complaining that they're not making their bar tab sales at the club because no one's drinking. And so
well, they're
it's
going to
affecting
need
their
alcohol
business.
sooner or later, right?
I don't think
I
so.
said, I have
They're
3
just doing other
children.
things.
Maybe my kids are an anomaly. I can't say, but they seem to have quite a nice relationship with booze.
A thirst. So I wonder if one day they'll be interested in cars as well, because they must want some sort of freedom. Okay, they're city kids, right?
Well, we lived in London, and London is one of the most extraordinary car cultures. It's amazing. Like in art, there are certain cultures that have a kind of, a deep-seated appreciation and relationship to art. Like Switzerland, Germany, America is humongous. China has been emerging. Korea is fantastic. And at the same time, like if you buy a classic car in certain jurisdictions, like say Italy, it's more usual than not that you're going to get zero history. For me, a car, like a piece of art, the provenance, the depth of the documentation that is associated with this vehicle tells the story. It's telling you a narrative story that, for me, I treasure those documents.
Do you approach collecting cars the same way that you approach collecting art? Is that a same comparison or wildly different?
Does it matter who owned a painting or a sculpture?
Yeah.
Or...
Are you kidding? That's the value of the owner. Like when you're an emerging artist, I'm old, but I make art, and I haven't, because I've done so many disparate things, from selling art to curating art. I never took an art class in my life until I was teaching one. I'm completely self-taught, and I've written books on it for MIT, and I've taught at Harvard and Yale and Columbia, and teach now at the University of Zurich. But when you're nuts about it, it's an obsession. It's almost like a disease. So, I mean, I had a bad experience with the classic car where I don't really know if I can handle dealing with that issue right now.
You don't want to bring it up again.
1973 RSR.
Must you?
No,
But
we don't have to.
It took me 5 years to get over this situation. But I always say with the collector, having no money is no impediment to buying something. And you could tell a hardcore, serious collector of something when they'll find a way. So right now I'm looking at a 1993 Porsche 960, a 968 Club Sport, which I like kind of raw homologation cars that were made for some racing, mostly rallies or some racing series. And by statute, you have to homologate 500 cars into regular production, often at a loss for the manufacturer to qualify for certain race series. And I like cars that are different, unique, and have a kind of rawness to them that are unusual. And really, you get a visceral. I mean, there are certain cars where you can feel a cigarette butt on the street in your butt when you're driving it.
Princess and the Pea.
Yeah, exactly, which I love. I want that pea to be in my But like for me, collecting is collecting. And again, like once you get I was looking at car sites like Bring a Trailer in the lobby waiting to be picked up. And the first websites I look at every morning, I have Bloomberg on the computer running the live broadcast, watching you and
Thank
other
you very
people.
much.
And then I'm looking at ArtNet where I write. It's like there's a classic driver, which they just did a piece on this Japanese market Integra Type R that I have, and then I look at Piston Heads, which is a great British site. There's Sports Car Market, and there's Octane. They're just, for me, I don't differ. Again, it's this kind of very democratic, non-exclusionary way of approaching everything. I treat everyone with respect and dignity. I'm forthright. My articles are a bit provocative, get me into quite a bit of trouble because I have an opinion, and I try to tell the truth as much as I can. And people can't really tolerate that.
Look behind you. There's Tom Keene. Speaking of
that's so
financial
cool.
news celebrities.
Look, see, this is how I judge a good piece of art or a good experience. The hair stands up on my arm like a child and up my back. I mean, you
Kenny,
can't fake that.
I wanted to ask you about that, writing about the art world and, writing things that make people uncomfortable. And I know I of course have read your column and read interviews with you. And I think one time you described the art world as a mafia and as rather mean-spirited at times. And I was curious how you find the car world. And as you move through the car world speaking truth, how is your experience comparing to moving through the art world?
That's an amazing question. I've written for Ferrari magazine and for Classic Porsche magazine in the past, and I find, I never said I'm not a mean person, and I'm deeply committed about my field, and I don't want to cause any anguish to anyone. But look, the art world is let's say it went from being the high of a year was 68 billion. Now it's had a bit of it's kind of like the Japanese economy. It's been in a bit of a systematic downturn. And the car market, I mean, for the the car market for new vehicles is like $2.5 trillion. But for classic cars, it's about half the art market, about $30 billion. So again, back to economics, which again, I never studied, but I'm a great fan and student of. There's a zero-sum mentality when like a technology company makes the amount of money that the art market or the car market makes in a year at lunchtime. And because the opportunities are much slimmer and more fought after, tooth and nail, one person's gain is at the calculable, measurable loss of somebody else who wants the same thing. So everyone, if you ask anyone on the street 3 questions, like what do you think is the most dishonest, rife with corruption field, art and cars would probably be among the top 2. And
they
politics.
are unregulated, rather.
Yeah, but I don't even think, there's a great financial writer for the FT, which Bloomberg and the FT are my 2 favorite vehicles.
I also love the FT.
We'll allow it. We will allow it.
Their arts coverage is fabulous. It's extraordinary on the weekend. It's amazing. And so I think, wait, what was the question?
The question was, if the art world how does the art world compare to the car world as you sort of infiltrate and say things that make people uncomfortable and maybe expose some of the things that are held in the shadows?
Well, like
so to
I
speak.
had back, I think that the only thing worse than art and cars combined would be crypto. That's really the last bastion of a state of nature where anything goes. It's veiled in anonymity, and there's a lot of room. But back to cars, like for any financial transaction, there was a great study by Georgina Adam, who used to write for the FT, still does a bit. And there's 165 laws that are applied to any commercial transaction, like buying a painting or buying a car. There's uniform commercial codes and various statutes that are applicable in terms of commerce and doing a transaction. There can't be fraud, there can't be misrepresentation, and all of these basic tenets of commercial law. So it's a misconception. It's a misconception that cars and motorcycles are for boys and technology is for guys more than women. I mean, I have always made an effort, a concerted effort for decades to work with people. I'm a human being, and I want to have a cross-section of people in the projects that I foster. I bought and sold cars from women and people from all stripes and all places. So I just think that, look, the problem, AI is not going to destroy civilization. The car industry is not any more dishonest or the art business than any other field. The problem is people. People are going to screwing things up. There are certain leaders in the world right now. There are certain wars, like in the Middle East and in Ukraine and now India and Pakistan. It's super alarming situations.
Let's hope that doesn't kick off.
I mean, it seems that we're in the first round, defensive posture.
No, I'm hoping it doesn't.
No, I pray it doesn't, because we can't afford 2 nuclear-armed countries facing conflagration. But I just think people need to have more respect for each other, a little more kindness and generosity of spirit. And there's a Bell's curve of morality. And I think it's just innate to people, to human beings, to be dishonest when there's money on the table.
So, all right, I want to talk about, it's interesting to me that I think of your 3 main interests as financial news and economics, art, and automotive. But the latter 2, in a sense, are the same, right? I mean, if I look at a GTO, that's to me a work of art worth just as much, if not more, than the irises. But the difference is you can drive the GTO, right? And so it's not just about looking at it from all different angles. Operating it is a thing that you can't do with most artworks, right? So how do you feel about actually driving these cars?
Okay, I have a response, surprising enough. How do you store 150 cars? Very expensively.
It is, yes.
How do you store 150 paintings in a free port, in a warehouse. They call them free ports because they're like autonomous city states.
Oh, I saw Tenant.
America has one. Switzerland has many. Singapore has some.
Did you see Christopher Nolan's Tenant?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, they have free ports there. That's where kind of some of the action happens in that movie.
A lot of. I would say the owner of this network has a free port with a low. Because when you collect art, you can't. There's no threshold to being finished. You're never finished. Although Ralph Lauren was asked, "What's the next car you're going to add to his illustrious car collection?" And he said, "I have them all." But that strikes me as
most people
somewhat,
don't. But I guess you don't keep cars at a free port, right?
Oh, they'll keep anything at a free port.
You just have to have a lot of space.
A lot of space and a lot of money. So I think in the art world, they always bandy this term around, late capitalism. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And then I was thinking one day, people buy cars they don't drive, art they keep in storage, wine they don't drink, jewelry they don't wear, and houses they don't live in. And to me, that smacks of what late capitalism would be.
But surely you must do the same. I mean, you just can't drive so many cars, and there's some vehicles that you must want to look at and smell and see, but maybe you can't experience driving it that much. Maybe like a Countach, it's just not as much fun to drive as it is to look at.
Especially going backwards in that car. You have to hang out of the car.
Yeah.
It's going reverse is the challenge. But yeah, it's 100% true. You only have one butt to stick on a car seat, and you only have so much wall space and one set of eyes to look at your art. And I agree. I mean, I want to move to Switzerland where I'm teaching and spend. I love to spend time there. And I was in the Engadine, which is this region of the mountains.
Oh, I know it well.
So I was there for 2 months. I'm dying to find a way. And why do I want to live there? Because I'm such a New York City is coursing through my circulatory system. I love the energy, the aggression, all of it, and the congestion of extraordinary people and art and culture and everything. I like to drive, and
especially in the Engadine.
The only
beautiful roads.
The only exercise that I could tolerate. I'd never been to a gym, thank God. I don't jog because
that's respectable.
I can't run because forget it, too much wear and tear. And swimming, so I could find places to swim in various public pools that are all over in every little town, and I love to drive. So I literally why do I want to move there? Besides the fact in this Engadine region, there's 30 plus galleries in a 15-kilometer range and 5 museums, all within 15 kilometers of Pontresina, the town that I just spent time in. But that's pretty much where I want to gear up to spend the rest of my life. And then come back here and dip in.
You can teach art at the Lyceum Alpinum, which is a boarding school in Suatz.
Suatz is amazing.
About 20 kilometers outside of St. Moritz.
I know it very well.
Yeah, and great roads to drive on. Art, sculptures all over the place.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone there?
I know a lot of people there, yeah.
I'm down. Maybe I want a teaching
job. How do you know people there? You want to give us some insight into...
Well, a lot of people in my family went to Suatz.
Oh, that's amazing.
And one of my best friends grew up, Reto Grigori, his family is from Suatz.
Reto?
Yeah, so...
I did not know his family was from the area.
So I go there a lot. Yeah.
And they have great car shows. They have this amazing thing in St. Moritz on the lake, frozen lake. And they drive some of the most extraordinary. I saw them craning in an old 275 Ferrari into a hotel in St. Moritz, and they have driving on ice. But it's back to the schools. I befriended this Iraqi architect who's one of the most profound human beings I've ever met in my life, Zaha Hadid. One of the things that really moved me was that she did a factory in Leipzig for BMW. What she did was so extraordinary, and I don't think it's ever been equaled. The conveyor belt goes through the executive offices and the cafeteria of the factory. So I like to sort of in this building in Bloomberg, everything is see-through.
Transparency is important.
That's my whole life.
When you're dealing with financial markets,
100%.
It's paramount.
So I bring transparency to the art market, and people freak out because one of the things that draws people to crypto and to art is the secrecy and the veil of opaqueness.
Didn't Zaha make some concept cars for you, Kenny?
So I was.
Tell us about those.
You don't have to wind me up much to spew on. Sorry, I want to hear more about you two. It's way more interesting than
No,
me.
you're our
Not to
guest.
us.
We get to ask you all the. I've got a long list.
So I was in awe of this woman, and I'm not an architecture fan, but again, I love industrial design. She designed this factory. She did the swimming stadium for the Olympics in the UK, and I became super close with her just because I was in awe of her mental prowess. People would run across the street to say how she inspired them to follow various pursuits in their life that they felt uncomfortable with. So I started working with her firm. I was interested in maybe doing a small building project with her, but I could barely function in my own business. I'm the worst business person. She passed away. Women didn't have to work twice as hard in that field. She worked 5 times as hard. She worked herself to death, but I had asked her only partner, who's taken over the business, to design a car for me because I'm so fanatical. I never told her because I was scared of her. She has this notorious personality. So I got her firm to design a prototype vehicle, which was 3 wheels, and it would drive upright in the city, and on acceleration, it would recline for better aerodynamics, and it was hydrogen-based. And we made a 1-to-1 scale model, and as they say in the UK, I blagged my way into getting a free berth, like in a car show in Excel in London, and the architecture practice made me a whole booth and a stand. It was so cool. So I ended up getting reviewed in Autocar by Richard Bremner, who's a brilliant writer.
Great magazine.
And then I got a teaching gig at the Royal Academy of Art in the vehicle design department, among the best. So I gave one lecture, and it was wonderful. The kids really loved it, and I was so engaged. It was so exciting. Then I did a joint lecture with Frank Stevenson, who was designing for Ferrari and Maserati. And then I tried to produce the car.
To sell?
Yeah, but they say I know Gauntlet is the surname. I know the son, Richard Gauntlet, but his dad famously, Victor Gauntlet, he owned Aston Martin. And he said, you want to make a small fortune in cars, start out with the big one. Yeah. And I spent 2 years researching. I went to Puch in Austria, various kit car manufacturers to make a chassis. And I just thought, I can't even do my own job. How am I going to do that? Anyway, so then Zaha cornered me in the parking lot and started screaming at me, how could you engage my partner without telling me? And then we became the best of friends. But I also, the second time, we did a 4-wheel version because I was trying to produce it. And then I went back to the Royal College, and they were ripping me apart. They were like, this looks like every prototype we've ever seen. There's nothing.
But it stands up.
Yeah, and it could possibly be sold. And then the fire alarm went off. And I was like, oh, thank God. Goodbye. See you later. I just ran.
Saved by the bell.
Saved by the bell.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the transparent factory, because we're talking about industrial design and the transparency of Bloomberg. Volkswagen has this transparent factory in Dresden, the Glaserne Manufaktur, and that's where they made the Phantom, the Phaeton, sorry. That's where they made some Bentley Continental Flying Spur, but it's a completely see-through factory. So cool. The Germans do these things, and other cultures, you're right, design not just for use, but also for aesthetics or for, I don't know, the feeling. And I guess I would say we don't do that as much, except for I'm sitting in a building with this incredible courtyard. And
because the entrepreneur that runs this business is a paradigm shifter. He creates his own destiny. I love people that are self-wrought, that I don't believe in luck. I think you create your own destiny. And someone like Michael Bloomberg, again, I'm not kissing up to you guys, although I'm going to hand you my resume when I leave. But he's someone who he couldn't find what he wanted when he started in terms of he became like a noun, like a Bloomberg device, a screen. It's become, I often say, if you want to trade Andy Warhol, you have to put your nose against the Bloomberg screen for Warhol, and that's all you have to do every single day, 24 hours. So I love, and just the way he's on the board of many museums and institutions, and he converges his interest, and he does so in a way where I wish he was president. And they talk about American exceptionalism. I think that's kind of really depressing and also America is great. America is the best. That's absurd. Go to Italy. I went to Ghana to do a piece for GQ. Go to any country and they're all extraordinary. Now everyone's poo-pooing like globalism. That's the whole beauty of being in art and cars, is because you get to intermingle with people from all walks of life and all different cultures and to learn from them. So, yeah, I love all of that stuff, and I love to commingle. Life is so short. I always say to my students, don't listen to me, don't listen to your family, certainly not your teachers, but you have to look at the two of you are living like a perfect kind of example of following your interest in the extreme and making it your life, your vocation.
This is my best self when I'm with Hannah, though.
You know
like,
what?
This is the best part.
I feel the same,
She's
and
super cool. You
thanks,
both are
guys.
so cool.
I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday where they were saying their life wasn't what they expected, and I said, my life is exactly what I expected, actually. Like, looking back, there was every moment, even at low moments, underneath it all, I was still really happy and really like, yeah, this is it. This is it. Every single day. I mean, everything in my life has built up to where I am now, which is what I always wanted to be doing. Yes, I totally agree with you, Kenny. I think if you don't like your life, change it. And I know that's such a trite thing to say, but
I want to get back to cars here. And
wait a second.
Hang on. I think
I was getting on my soapbox.
I'm
here.
so happy. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for all of us.
But
I saw some interesting stats today, and when you mentioned nationality in cars, I think it's so interesting. When I first started visiting plants in Detroit, and you both may know this, but not everyone does, there's some parking lots where they don't allow foreign cars to park. So even if you work at this Ford plant, you're not allowed to park a Honda there. You have to park somewhere else. And today I saw something really surprising. No car maker imports more cars from overseas than General Motors. They import more cars to the U.S., sell in the U.S. than Toyota or Nissan or Honda. And another interesting stat.
I would sell my shares then, because they're going to face a lot of problems.
They're going to have a lot of problems. No car maker exports more cars from the U.S. to other countries than BMW. They export more cars from here
Mercedes is probably
than
number 2.
Ford, than GM, than Stellantis. And that just makes me think about the fact that, is it really an American car? Like, I bought a Chevy truck and I bought a Dodge Challenger. The truck was made in Mexico. The Challenger was made in Canada. And yet people walk to my house and they say, oh, you have 2 American cars, right? But
it's not that simple.
I digress. What do you find any American cars interesting or good? Because you say you started getting into like 70s, 80s, 90s. So is there stuff that you love from America as opposed to from Italy or from Germany or from Tokyo?
By the way, the CEO of Ford had a bid car, a BYD Chinese car.
Yes.
You get like $300,000 worth of car for $30,000.
We've had him on this podcast, Jim
No
Farley.
way.
Yes, we have.
Oh my God, that's
Great guy.
so cool. God,
He was really obsessed with the
oh my God, I paled to that guy.
with the kind of
genius.
hybrid. What do you call the kind of hybrid car where the engine just charges the
like
battery?
a mild hybrid.
He invented like a 5-minute that increases the range of an electric motor. He's
Yeah.
a battery maven.
So, but what do you like in terms of like nationalities? Do you like you mentioned the Lancia, right? But do you like any American cars?
Yeah, number one, I think like Corvettes.
Yes.
Thank
really
you.
cool.
Thank you.
Hannah loves
Thank
the
you.
C3 Corvettes.
I love
Criminally underrated.
Yes, and I mean, you look at them today, and I always my first impression is, oh, what Ferrari is that? They look insane.
Yes.
So you get a lot of
Agreed.
bang for your bucks,
Beautiful. And by the way, they just changed the interior and got rid of that waterfall of control buttons that goes down the
I'm
center
so
stack.
happy about that.
No, I'm not. I love those buttons.
I think they heard the people. The people spoke, and they said,
Yeah, but then you go and get an older car. And by the way, like
Yes.
I know you love motorcycles. I would have a motorcycle in my living room if I was into it.
Well, that brings up a question I have that I'm
I know
going
I went
to
off piste
insert.
again.
Yeah, I
into
wanted to
this.
hear if you like any American. So Corvette is
But
the
you
only
said
one.
Corvette.
Yeah.
But here's a question that's philosophical in nature.
oh
Can
no,
you
I may
enjoy?
not be the right person to answer.
Yeah, I know. Is it equally valuable to enjoy a car that you don't drive or a motorcycle that you don't drive?
No.
Like, is that so? You, in your mind, as a quote unquote car guy, is that of equal standing?
I have to say, I'm always contradicting myself every sentence. So I remember it was the biggest adventure when we were living in London and I was taking my kids to school every day was, is the car going to break down from a 1939 Lancia Aprila to a Series 1 XJ6 with a manual transmission? I had a Delta Integrale that broke down on the bridge. And like the British have this crazy do-it-yourself, pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality where the kids don't wear winter jackets. And I went out to push the car with all the kids in it, and some bicycle dude got off his bike and pushed me across the bridge single-handedly and told me to get back in the car.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean,
I think some are.
I asked because in the car world, there's certainly more credibility given to, if you drive the car.
If you don't drive it, it's gonna fall to pieces.
But as an artist, can't you appreciate?
Yes, I was driving my kid to school in an old '70s Porsche, and I said, "Doesn't it look great inside?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's such a minimalist dash." And no, I said, "No, in my office garage where there's no crazy no bikers spitting on me, no stone chips, no crazy people." I mean, it's amazing that you don't get retested to drive a car and you could be 80. I had some guy who was well into his 80s who slammed into the back of a rear motored 911, and that's no joy.
I think you have to have driven it.
You have to use it.
I think I think it's okay. So, for example,
you have to use it.
I'm putting now a Ducati in my living room, and
perfect.
I spent a couple of decades riding it. I'm getting to, I don't like to fold myself up that much anymore. And so I loved driving it, but now it's a little uncomfortable and I just want to look at it.
But you put your time in it. If you buy a painting and you shove it in and you never take it out of the crate. I mean, I'm such a car addict. I've done stuff like that, but that's criminal. And what I like about cars and bikes, if you don't drive them, you have to pay. There's a price to be paid because unless you lube it up and drain the fluids out, the rubber is going to rot. So the disuse of these vehicles causes discernible damage to their subsequent
True. Well,
value.
we have that discussion here a lot because Hannah and Magnus buy high-mile cars, and I had a bad habit of looking for low-mile vehicles, but now I've been thinking, wait, do I really want to buy, something that's 10 years old and only has 600 miles on it? Like, that's not going to work as well as something that has 60,000 miles on it, because at least I know that they were using it and taking care of it.
With low-mile stuff, I'm always like, oh, I guess it wasn't that great to drive.
I don't want 600 miles, but I'll take 20 to 30,000. I like low-mileage cars with a full history, but have been used.
There's a sweet spot in there.
As long as they're regularly serviced with the spark plugs changed and the oils changed. But I have this Honda Integra Type R. I think there's 40,000 miles. That's a 98. It's one of the rawest. I had back surgery because I was lifting sculpture and I blew my disc into my spinal cord and I was nearly paralyzed. And I was rushed into emergency surgery. And when I got out of surgery, my foot moved, but my legs still didn't move. And from the hospital bed, I bought the Integra thinking I could always lift my leg and stick it in the car and press the gas.
Oh, my gosh.
It's terrifying when you're in that situation.
Yeah.
I almost lost a leg in a motorcycle accident, and the first thing I started to do when I came to 4 days later was Googling how I could ride a motorcycle with only one leg.
Oh
because
you win. I think I really like the both of you more than before.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, luckily my mother came and convinced them not to amputate, and now my legs work fine.
And I could walk fine and drive the cars. And wow, that's crazy. That's insane.
So what about so you like these more eclectic vehicles, the Lancia, the Integra, right? I guess the RSR, anyone would want that. But what are your favorites? Is there any that you think like that is an iconic masterpiece and I have to have it?
Many, but a Porsche 2.7 RS lightweight, which was only made for 1 year. And it's funny because I call the seats in a car the furniture. So I bought a Renault Turbo 1 based on the seat. It had the craziest car seat I think I've ever seen, or certainly among the most. I even made furniture out of one of them. Literally, I put a base on it and put it into my house. And you're going to think I'm totally out of my gourd crazy, but the hardware to move the seat, which is like a little Pringle, it's like a little potato chip in the RS, just the 2.7 RS is the everyday supercar, race car that you could your grandma could drive it. You could do the grocery. You could see. You don't have to lie down to drive it like your motorcycle, except you're going the other way. And and you could turn it on, unlike most Ferraris, after 9 months, and it'll fire right up. So I think the hardware is like this long, elongated screw. And in the middle of the screw is this round nut that's sort of flat on both sides. And I never quite figured out how it even works, but it was just a piece of sculpture. It was wild. So I love that. And that's probably my favorite of all cars because it just ticks all the boxes. It's fast. It's raw. No one knows if it's 20 grand or significantly more.
No.
So it's not pretentious and no one wants to key you just for being you.
I'm
so
looking
I think,
at prices.
And then,
it's more than 20 grand.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
I mean, it looks like every other Porsche from the era.
Totally. It looks like I love it.
We get you, dude.
Very,
We get you.
Yeah, very stealth.
And also it looks
quiet luxury.
You could make a replica, which I hate, and I hate people that like predate, post-date, after-date.
Really, you don't like backdating Porsches?
And I don't like Singer. I mean, you can't.
This is the truth.
I don't
now
care.
We're getting somewhere.
I don't care if you modify something, but don't put your effing name on it because you didn't make it. It's a Porsche. Don't put Gambala on it. Roof is probably the greatest. A roof Porsche sold for $6 million. I think it's a super cool car. They are like the one exception. There's always an exception. But otherwise, like if something is great, the Germans can't even engineer things terribly well anymore, unfortunately. There's a lot of issues infrastructurally in that country.
I don't know. Although I guess the car I'm driving right now is Austrian. And
what is that?
Technically,
it's the Mercedes G Wagon, the G580, and
really?
I will say,
what year?
Listeners will have heard this already. It is the first time that I have ever wanted an electric version of a car more than a gas version of a car. And I didn't think I was going to because it
has a Pook internals or something.
Well, no, it's made by Magna Steyr in Austria.
They were originally Pook or something.
Yes. I think Hannah knows the relationship there, but
they were.
Amazing.
So I just think this is a perfect vehicle.
Very aerodynamic.
Of the cars on sale today, of the cars that are made now, this is the one, if I could only have one, that I would buy. And it's shocking to me because it's electric.
To me.
Yeah.
That is,
Stick to motorcycles.
Kenny, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about the electric?
Okay, so I'll say something that will make me no friends. I hate electric cars. I don't.
Period. Full stop.
I've never driven one, and I would like to feel instant acceleration. I don't really. Once the key turns, I lose interest. So the guy that helps me with all my cars, he's brilliant, and he still works with me in various other capacities now that I'm not living in the UK. And he was so frustrated that I didn't know what a carburetor was, torque, and all of these different things that he bought me a model kit to build my own transparent engine. It remains in the box, and I love it unused. But when it comes to electric, so I love a classic Mini. For me, is the greatest epitome of all design. It appealed to wealthy people and not wealthy people, and it was affordable and coveted by all. And it was the first piece of truly like democratic industrial design. And to drive it is as much joy and pleasure, especially if it's supercharged and as any car worth 100 times more. But electric cars, the lead batteries, the plastics, the shelf life of these batteries. If you scrap all the Teslas in the world, even before he wielded a chainsaw and became, I guarantee you that whole Doge thing will cost the U.S. government more than anything else, but I won't get there. But like, if you get a small engined car and preserve older cars, you will add significantly to the longevity of this planet.
You'll get no argument from us.
I say it all the time. If you want to save the planet, stop buying new things.
100%.
Start using what's already existing.
Things are great.
In the world.
I have
stop consuming.
My pants are from the 90s, vintage polyester.
We agree with you on those
today?
things.
I love the
Always.
track pants.
We agree with you on those things, but we also are in this business. We're test driving new products all the time.
Sure,
so
it's fun.
That's why.
Fascinating.
That's why I say of new products that are currently produced, if I could only buy one, this would be it. Because I think it's really the Swiss Army knife of all vehicles out there.
You can't buy a McLaren or a Ferrari in a manual, like they say.
That's crazy. I don't know why Vigna does that, or why his predecessors have done that. Why would Ferrari not want to make?
Porsche tried to do it, and there was an uproar. But if
It
I
doesn't
have,
make sense
I have such a
financially.
short attention span. It does. People don't. They don't. Kids don't know how
They
to
say
drive it.
They say they want a manual, but every automaker says the take rate is less than 1%.
But not just manual. Why? So I've said this a million times, but if I were the CEO of Ferrari, Benedetto Vigna, I would say we're going to make one vehicle. We make so many different models. We're going to make one model that has no screens in it, that has all analog gauges, that has a stick shift, that has a hand brake, that has mechanical steering or hydraulic assist, not a computer.
100%.
Throttle not by wire, but actually by a wire. So
I don't even know
buy
they did
that.
away with handbrakes.
You can buy that. It just happens to be made in 1980.
I know, but why wouldn't
they
could make one now and they could charge $5 million for it and it would fly off the shelves.
I had a Ginetta. I had a Caterham. But my attention span.
What do you think of the Caterham? I'm always interested in that.
That's there's only a hair that separates a Caterham from a motorcycle. If you want to, I went to the Nürburgring. By the way, I'm the worst driver. I forgot to mention that. My attention span is like a fly unless I'm crazily engaged. So the reason I can only drive manuals is because otherwise my mind will wander and I'll just drive into a wall. It makes me pay attention. I even lost track of where I was on the Nürburgring because there's 76 turns. But I had a friend who had a D-Type and all these fancy cars, and I had a Caterham and an old beat-up Dino that I traded for Mitsubishi. But anyway, so they say the best security device, anti-theft device for a car is a manual transmission. And if you just nailed it. If they made a manual Ferrari, it would become the most collected car of its time. But you're right. You're both right, because, Hannah, you're right. They've done studies, and even in Europe, even in England, people are not buying manual cars. It goes back to where we started. Kids just don't have the same visceral relationship to the automobile. I mean, I guess motorcycles, I don't know about the scope of the motorcycle.
No, the motorcycle
industry.
sales have been disastrous.
Interesting.
It's not good. Very cool. So, incredible conversation. We're going to have him back.
He needs to be a regular. He's basically our neighbor.
And
he
is. And it's easy to jump from topic to topic with him.
There's a lot to digest there. And I also think we need to talk about his actual house. I saw that it was featured in the New York Times in like an architectural art.
New York Magazine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually went to his house yesterday.
Did you go inside?
So after the interview, we were both leaving Bloomberg, and I was like, dude, you said you've never driven an electric vehicle, and I have this G Wagon here. Like, do you want to drive it back to your house? And he did
it.
Yeah.
That was his first ever EV experience.
I guess so.
We need to have him back on and hear what he thought.
Yeah, he didn't really tell me what he thought because he was just so excited about having been on. And also, it's only 3 blocks away from here.
I mean, it's very nice having a Bloomberg fan on. I didn't actually realize he was really such a fan of Bloomberg, the man and the business.
Yeah, it was crazy. Nice. I was kind of glad Mike wasn't here because he...
Oh, that would have been overwhelming.
Mike Bloomberg sits right outside this podcast studio, and he would have been like stalker-ish if he'd seen him. But so very cool. What have you got coming up this weekend, this week?
You know what? I'm actually working on the book a bit. I don't think we've really talked about it, but I'm working on a coffee table book with my husband Magnus. So we're well underway to working on that. So I'm doing that. And
this is a book about his car collection.
Yes,
or what?
Magnus's top 20 Porsche builds of his own personal over the years.
Nice.
And it's going to feature amazing photographs by a lot of really notable photographers. Each chapter is about a different car with dozens of photos. It's going to be 300 to 400 pages. It's going to be a really substantial, really beautiful and in-depth book about Porsches. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a lot of work, but we're really excited about it.
I look forward to reading it.
Thank you. I look forward to having you read it.
And then I'll see you back here, same time, same place next week. Shoot us an email.
Yes, hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. And we really do appreciate every email, whether you're telling us about the cars you own or telling us about what we got wrong or what you want us to talk about in the future. We do read and appreciate every email.
Have a great week. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.